As a brand strategist, I do three things. I work with clients in three capacities. I help them position their brand, so that's figuring out what you love to do paired with something other people need and they're willing to spend money on. Once we position the brand, we help you build it. Brand identity, website, all of those elements we need to build the framework for what you're going to show for your brand. And then, of course, once the brand is built, we figure out how to promote it. We use intelligent social media strategy as typically the approach, because that's the leanest way that we can promote your product or your service. My clients, for the most part, are personalities, experts, businesses. I work a lot with individual brands, startups, all kinds of interesting clients from around the world. Living in LA, I get to work a lot in the entertainment industry, so my clients have appeared on American Idol, Dancing with the Stars, X Factor, Shark Tank. I worked on for a few years with sharks and entrepreneurs on the show. Project Runway, CNN, The Doctors, and many, many others. That's enough about me. Now we're going to talk about you. I do get asked a lot of questions, and I encourage you to tweet in case I don't get a chance to answer your question today. Phil Pallen. Send me on Twitter. It's @PhilPallen. And I promise I will answer your question at some point over the next 2 days. Let's talk about the reason I'm here. My talk is called OCD, which stands for Obsessive Content Development. So today I'm talking specifically about the kinds of content and the things to consider as you create content for your brands. Let's jump right into it. I'm going to go through 3 things based on the time that I have for you to think about as you start to become obsessed with creating content for your brands. Number 1, you need to solve a problem. You have 2 choices. You can either solve a problem or you can just exist on the internet. Existing on social media is not enough anymore. You need to solve a problem. If you can create content that solves people's problems, it means that you have to spend less time figuring out how to promote yourselves, because people will find you if you use the right strategies. This is really important, particularly for this audience. I get to travel around the world and do all kinds of talks for different audiences, but we have a lot of startups and investors. And if you take too long to tell us about your idea, we lose interest. On the internet, you have about 3 to 5 seconds to grab our interest. Otherwise, you've lost us to viral kitty videos on YouTube. So I encourage everyone to really focus your pitch. Who are you, and why should I care? That's the question that you need to answer in 1 sentence. I have a book called Shut Up and Tweet, which I'll talk about later, but I teach people this strategy for writing your social media bios. Who are you, and why should anyone care? That's the question that you want to answer. The second thing to think about as you create content for your brands, you want to pick your favorites. And what I mean by this is we have so many social media platforms that we think we need to be active on. In fact, there's too many. I'm sure many of you would agree. So rather than being mediocre on 10 different platforms, I would rather you be a rock star on 3. Rather than being average, let's be really good at 3 platforms. And those 3 platforms differ depending on your brands. For me, Twitter, Pinterest, as a branding expert, people want to know what I think of in terms of good examples of branding, and then Instagram. People want to know where I am, because I travel all around and work with celebrities. So for me, those are my 3 priority platforms. I challenge all of you to figure out what your 3 priority platforms are. Let's talk about Pinterest really quick. I mentioned it. Something interesting for me has happened this year with Pinterest. In January, I realized, well, Phil, you give everyone else advice, maybe you should start taking your own. And I realized people didn't really care about everything that I was pinning. Travel destinations, you know, clothes, stuff like that. That's not on brand for me, so my audience doesn't really care. So what I did was I focused my Pinterest. I gave my Pinterest purpose, which meant it gave me clarity on what I was pinning. So I was going to pin good examples of branding, business cards, websites, logos. And it gave me focus and direction on exactly what I was supposed to be doing, but it also gave my audience structure, and it serves a purpose when people find me on Pinterest. Since January, I've grown from 800 followers to 5,000 as of today. I just got over 5,000 today. And so that's just an example of something recent, but we do this with clients all the time. When you give your platforms purpose, you can do a lot. And the third and final point I want to make today about creating content, becoming obsessed with the content and to grow your audience, to establish your expertise and to grow your audience. And what does that mean? We're juggling two things. I hope to get to meet many of you in person. When we meet, we have a phase, and when we meet, we have a first impression of one another. You, the information. I take inventory of you, the information you're sharing, your personality. There's really something special about being able to meet you in person. Unfortunately, on the internet, we don't always get that luxury. And so I always say the best branding is when we can replicate the in-person experience as closely as possible. So we take inventory of you in real life and figure out almost how to overcompensate for that on the internet. So there's two essential pieces of your brand. It can be a mix of, brand could be a service, or it can be a product. It can be a mix of both. But it's not one or the other. Your personality, your perspective is essential to the positioning, to the success of your product. The product, it could be the most brilliant idea in the world, but the product alone is not going to sell it. So you need to figure out how you marry the product with personality. And I use this comparison often when I'm talking to individuals, celebrities, startups, products. I talk about your content to personality ratio, okay? So you're juggling these two elements in some personality between content and personality. If we look in America, Ellen DeGeneres, most of a celebrity that's built an incredible brand, mostly based on personality. She would fall somewhere many on that end of the spectrum. Many more on content. Brands or politicians have built a brand more on content. The most important lesson here is that of your ratio. Again, it's not just the product that's going to sell this. It's a mix of the product and you. And social media is kind of the manifestation of that, where we have that level of transparency. So even if it's a product, reach out to you individually. So even if it's a product you're developing or pitching, there's still a personal brand associated with you inherent to the success of that. This gives you a little taste. Of course, I only have 15 minutes, and I'm going to leave some room for questions, but it gives you a little taste of my approach to branding and to social media. I have a book called Shut Up and Tweet that I'm going to have actually at my workshop tomorrow, which I just double-checked with the workshop folks over there, and I've got 10 spots left. So my workshop tomorrow is called Project Branding, where I'm going to have more time to go into detail on the steps required to build your brands. It's at 12 in room 1. That is it for me. Thank you so much.